Never explain yourself. Machiavelli's power rule. There is a quiet rule of power that most people discover too late in life. The more you explain yourself, the weaker you appear. This idea goes directly against what most people are taught. From childhood, we are told to explain our actions, defend our decisions, and justify our choices to others. But Machiavelli understood something deeper about human nature. People do not interpret explanations as honesty. They interpret them as uncertainty. When a person explains themselves too much, it signals that they are seeking approval. It suggests that they need others to agree with them in order to feel confident about what they are doing. In the world of power, authority, and influence, that is a dangerous position to be in. Machiavelli believed that strong leaders project certainty, even when the situation is uncertain. A ruler who constantly explains himself appears defensive. A ruler who calmly acts and allows results to speak creates the impression of control. This difference may seem subtle, but in reality it shapes how people perceive status and authority. Think about the moments in life when someone begins over-explaining their actions. Perhaps they are trying to justify why they made a decision, why they did something a certain way, or why they reacted to a situation. The explanation grows longer and longer. The tone becomes defensive, and even if their reasoning is perfectly logical, the listener begins to sense insecurity. This reaction happens almost automatically. Human beings read signals of confidence and doubt very quickly. When someone speaks with calm certainty, others assume they know what they are doing. When someone speaks with excessive explanation, others begin to question whether they truly believe in their own decisions. Machiavelli understood that power often depends on perception. In many situations, the appearance of control is just as important as control itself. Leaders who maintain composure and avoid unnecessary explanations create a psychological advantage. They allow others to assume competence instead of inviting scrutiny. This principle appears again and again throughout history. Powerful figures rarely rush to justify themselves. They speak briefly. They move forward with their plans. They allow the results of their actions to shape the narrative instead of trying to control every opinion around them. Of course, this does not mean that communication is useless. It simply means that explanations should be deliberate, not desperate. There is a difference between calmly sharing information and nervously defending your choices. One projects authority, the other projects uncertainty. In everyday life, the temptation to explain yourself appears constantly. Someone questions your decision. Someone doubts your judgment. Someone misunderstands your intentions. The natural reaction is to immediately clarify everything. But often the stronger response is restraint. When you remain calm and do not rush to justify your position, you communicate confidence without saying a word. You demonstrate that you are comfortable with your choices. You show that your direction does not depend on universal approval. This does not mean becoming arrogant or dismissive. Machiavelli's insight is not about disrespecting others. It is about understanding the psychology of status. People instinctively respect those who appear certain about their path. They question those who appear eager to prove themselves. Consider how often unnecessary explanations create problems that did not exist before. A short statement turns into a long defense. A simple decision turns into a debate. The more someone talks, the more openings they create for criticism and misunderstanding. Machiavelli advised rulers to avoid placing themselves in positions where their authority could be weakened through endless argument. The same idea applies in modern life. When you over-explain your decisions, you invite others to dissect them piece by piece. You create a stage where your confidence is tested. But when you speak clearly and move forward, the conversation often ends. People take their cues from your certainty. The discussion fades because there is nothing left to challenge. There is also another reason Machiavelli warned against explaining too much. Explanations reveal strategy. When you describe every reason behind your actions, you show others how you think. You reveal your priorities, your doubts, and your future intentions. In competitive environments, this information can be used against you. Silence, on the other hand, preserves strategic ambiguity. When people cannot easily predict your reasoning, they become cautious. They must focus on their own decisions instead of attempting to control yours. This principle becomes especially powerful in situations where people are trying to challenge your authority or test your confidence. In many social dynamics, individuals push boundaries to see how others will react. They ask probing questions, they question decisions, or they subtly challenge the direction someone has taken. Often this is not about seeking information, it is about measuring strength. When a person immediately begins explaining themselves in great detail, the signal sent is that the challenge was successful. The conversation shifts from leadership to defense. The one who was questioned becomes the one trying to justify themselves. But when someone responds with calm brevity or silence, the dynamic changes completely. The challenge loses its power because there is nothing to attack. The person who initiated the challenge is left to interpret the silence, and in many cases they begin to second-guess their own position. Machiavelli understood that power often lies not in what is said, but in what is left unsaid. Silence forces others to fill the gap with their own assumptions, and human nature often fills that gap with caution. This is why many effective leaders choose their words carefully and sparingly. They speak with intention, not impulse. They do not feel compelled to clarify every criticism or defend every decision. Instead, they allow their actions and results to speak for them. There is also a deeper psychological effect that silence creates. When someone refuses to over-explain themselves, it subtly communicates that they are comfortable with disagreement. It signals that they do not require validation from everyone around them. This type of independence is often interpreted as strength. People tend to follow those who appear certain about their path. They trust individuals who move forward without constantly seeking approval. The absence of explanation can therefore become a signal of internal confidence. Consider how often debates escalate simply because someone feels the need to defend every point they make. One explanation leads to another clarification. That clarification invites another challenge. Before long, the conversation turns into a cycle of justification that drains energy without resolving anything. Machiavelli recognized that engaging in endless justification weakens authority. Leaders who argue constantly with critics appear uncertain about their own decisions. By contrast, leaders who remain calm and focused on their objectives maintain control of the situation. This does not mean that one should refuse to communicate entirely. Strategic silence is different from avoidance. There are moments when explanation is necessary. There are times when clarity helps align people toward a shared goal. But the key is intention. The powerful individual explains when it serves a purpose. The insecure individual explains because they feel pressured to do so. Learning the difference between these two motivations is essential. When explanation is used as a tool, it strengthens leadership. Another reason Machiavelli valued silence is that it preserves flexibility. When you reveal too much about your thinking, you lock yourself into a specific narrative. Others begin to expect consistency with the reasoning you have shared. Changing course later becomes more difficult. Silence allows room for adaptation. It allows decisions to evolve as circumstances change. Without lengthy explanations tying you to a single path, you retain the ability to adjust without appearing contradictory. History provides many examples of leaders who used this approach effectively. They communicated goals clearly, but kept their deeper strategies private. Observers could see the direction but not the full plan. This created both caution and respect among those who interacted with them. In everyday life, the same concept applies in smaller ways. When dealing with conflict, disagreement, or criticism, the urge to defend oneself can be overwhelming. Yet often the strongest response is composure. A short response, or sometimes no response at all, prevents the conversation from spiraling into endless debate. It allows the situation to settle naturally. Over time, people begin to recognize that challenging you does not produce the reaction they expected. This shift changes how others approach you. Instead of seeing someone who must justify every decision, they begin to see someone who acts with quiet certainty. Machiavelli believed that perception is one of the foundations of power. The way others interpret your behavior shapes how they interact with you in the future. Silence, when used wisely, becomes part of that perception. It signals control, it signals patience, and perhaps most importantly, it signals that your direction does not depend on the approval of every voice around you. In a world where many people feel pressured to constantly explain, justify, and defend their choices, the ability to remain composed and deliberate stands out. It becomes a quiet form of authority that others recognize instinctively. Understanding this rule does not mean abandoning communication. It means mastering when communication strengthens your position and when silence protects it. Machiavelli's insight remains relevant because human nature has not changed. People still test confidence, they still question authority, and they still interpret hesitation as weakness. The individual who understands the power of restraint moves differently through these situations. They speak when it serves their purpose. They remain silent when explanation would only dilute their authority. In doing so, they demonstrate a deeper lesson that Machiavelli understood centuries ago. True power rarely needs to explain itself. If you found this lesson valuable, and you want more insights into strategy, psychology, and the timeless power principles found in the works of Machiavelli, consider subscribing to the channel. Each week we explore ruthless lessons about human nature, influence, and the hidden rules that shape power and authority in the modern world. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and let me know which Machiavellian principle you would like to explore next. And remember, the strongest people rarely rush to justify themselves. They act with certainty, speak with intention, and allow their results to speak louder than explanations. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.